Welcome back to another week of my podcast. This is just kind of a place for me to share all of the different projects I'm working on. Right now, they're extremely fiber related, but who knows, that could change at any given moment, to be honest. I like to make things, and this is where I get to share it with you guys. Today is January 4th. Yes, Friday, January 4th. And I am just gonna get started because I have a lot of different things to share with you. So first of all, we're going to start with FOs. I'm not wearing anything knitting or crochet related. So with that, I have my... Ooh, I didn't think about looking up how this is pronounced before I actually had to share it, but Millifera is what I've been saying in my brain when I've read it. This is the Juniper Cowl by Pacific Northwest Knit Design. And I was working on this last podcast as a test knit. And now it is done. I love this cowl so much. The colorwork detail is amazing. Oh, and it's also released. It's been out for about a week now. Let's just peep some of that detail. Look at those bees. Their wings are so pretty. I love the way this colorwork was designed. The style of it is just so pretty and so delicate and so perfect. So we have the little floral border, and then we have a bunch of honeycomb with some different motifs on the inside, including some more flowery ones, and then some just like geometric ones. And so I have I did the regular size, and I did the mix and match to get me both the bees and the honeycomb. So that's my honeycomb side. And then there's my bee side. And I'm using yarn from my local yarn store. It's dyed here about 8 miles away from me. This is the Palouse Yarn Company line of yarn, and I use specifically the Seven Devils DK from this yarn dyer in the color, I think August and Jet are the two colors, but I have that information in my Ravelry, and it's just very soft. I was joking about how I was petting this cowl while I was weaving in ends when I was getting everything taken care of and finished up, and I wish that was a joke, but I really was. So pretty. Also, I'm proud of my floats, so here you go. They look very nice and neat. So anyway, beautiful drape, beautiful construction. I love this accessory. And then technically I have a second FO, but I'm going to share it for later in the podcast because it relates to some of my goals for this year. And I also don't physically have the piece with me, so I'll be popping in photos when I talk about it later on. So we are going to already jump into whips. So I'm going to start with my Advent 2020 sweater by Helene's Knit House. And this was made with my 2021 Hickory Lane Fiber Co. Advent. It was Disney Heroes versus Villains, sorry. And I'm wrangling it off screen because it's on multiple needles and kind of a bear to carry or move anywhere, so I thought I had it positioned in a way that I could just grab it, but clearly not. So here we go. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 colors. I'm on my 12th color right now. And that doesn't include the little like burgundy stripe here in between colors. And then there's the neck hole. This has been, I think I said it in a previous podcast, but the construction has been very interesting on this garment. I'm working the front and back panel alternating between the two, so that's been kind of fun. But I have that like carrot color in the middle there is the like top shoulder seam, and so I'm just swapping back and forth, and I have completed the number of stripes needed to go like around my arm, so now I'm starting to decrease for the body, and I've kind of figured out how far I want to decrease. I've had plenty of yarn left over after each stripe. I was kind of worried about that before I started, but I mean, I think I've only been using, I haven't weighed any of them yet, but maybe half a ball. So plenty of yarn. I'm not going to decrease as much as the pattern calls for because the pattern says that the hip measurement is the best one to go by, but the hip measurement that coordinated to the size for my bust was smaller, so I was kind of concerned about fit and figured I'd probably need to do some modifications. And then once I got into the pattern and saw how everything was being constructed, I felt pretty confident and I just don't decrease past what I want to decrease. So I'm not really getting myself trapped into a corner and feeling like I'm not going to be able to adjust what I want to adjust. So I'm just following the pattern for now, and then, oh, that's not true. I did add an extra stripe on each side of this shoulder seam to drop my yoke. Can you call it a yoke when it's not a circle? I don't know. But I want to drop so my the armhole is a little bit larger than what the pattern called for. I matched this up to some other garments that I've made. Of course, trying to take into account blocks, so I didn't quite go as far. But that gives me like, I think it's about 8 inches for armhole height, which is a little bit less than what I have for like one of my favorite knit garments. So I think that will work really nicely once everything's blocked and seamed, but we'll see what happens. I'm currently working on a villain stripe, so this is Jafar, and then this one was Ariel, and that one's Ursula, and I'm keeping a list of all of the colors that I'm using for which sections on my Ravelry page, in case you're interested in that. So I'm not quite halfway done, I guess. Almost, but not quite. So next I'll share the progress on my Love Note by Tin Can Knits, and I am making this as part of the knit along that Crochet Creations and I are hosting together, and that is the Love Note is in the Air knit along. I will say crochet along. So we have just under 2 weeks left of the knit along, and I'm at the point where I'm thinking I might have to play some yarn chicken and make some modifications just to use up the amount of yarn that I have and not need more, because I don't want scraps. So I have a little bit of this color left for the neckline, but I'm probably just going to see where that goes. And right now I'm on the sleeves. So I finished the body because I'm pretty sure I was still working on the body. I have a progress keeper back here from the last time. So I finished the body and I am doing a cropped version. It hits me at about my waistline currently. Again, this isn't blocked, so I'm sure it'll be a little bit longer once I blocked it, but I have one sleeve that I went pretty far on, and then I was like, I better make sure I have enough yarn on my second sleeve before I get too far. So I think I have about an inch left on this sleeve before I was supposed to start the ribbing, and then I dropped that and picked up my second sleeve, and I have I think 2 or 3 more inches left on this one before I'm at the same length here. I need to do a try on because I think this is what I have left. I haven't measured it recently, but I think I'm not going to quite be able to get my sleeves the length that the pattern calls for, which may or not be a problem. The last time I tried this on, the sleeve hit me at about my elbow, and I think I've knit a few more inches since then, so even if it comes down to like here, I think I'd be fine with that. So I'm just gonna take it in stride because I want a shorter sleeve anyway, kind of like a mid sleeve, and I'll just use what I have. And I might even go as far as to pick up the neck. If I had a third set of needles, I'd pick up the neckline, knit what I could with the red to see if I have anything left there, because then I would be toying with the idea of maybe doing a contrasting cuff on the sleeve. That I'm not sure of yet, so, but it's coming along nicely. Very excited to wear this. I will definitely have it done by the end of the knit along. And yeah, I took a little break from it this week. I knit a bunch of it last weekend. In fact, I think I did, like that first sleeve, I did the whole thing by the end of last Sunday, and then it's been a couple days since I started it, so I'm sure I had the second sleeve done by like Tuesday. So I've kind of just been on hold since then to decide what I want to do with it, since I'm kind of in a, I won't quite call it a pickle, but just a place where I'm going to have to be strategic about my yarn and sleeve length choices. This is a whip that I have not brought out for a little while because it kind of sat, I put it in hibernation just because I was gathering some more scraps, if you will. Like, I didn't have anything more to add to it. But with the recent bind off of our, oh, what's it called? Tidings Tea Wrap, I now have, and now that I know that I won't need anything else from that for this project, because now I just have to block and weave in Mans, I went and started adding the pieces I have left over to my Granny Stripe Blanket by Layla McCullough. And if you've been watching this for a while, you'll recognize this from, I'm sure it's been a year maybe since I've last shown this, but that was my Harry Potter Advent from last year, from Dragon Horde, not last year, sorry, 2020, from Dragon Horde Yarn and Yarn Cafe Creations up to here. So that was the last one of that Advent. And then this is a yarn that, the first yarn I dyed myself with Kool-Aid. It's just a speckled yarn. And that was left over from my Party Punch shawl from last year by TL Yarn Crafts. And I thought that was kind of a nice divider, single color to divide my Advent, my group of Advent colors. And then from there, this section is all of the leftovers I have from my set of Moana minis from Bad Wolf Girl Sits and Knits. I think there are 5. Yeah, because there's a blue one over here that doesn't quite make it all the way across. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had 5. And those were just leftovers from some socks that I made for my brother. And so I thought that would be nice to add to this blanket. And now finally I'm on this section, starting with this color, and I'm just working in order of the Tidings Tea Wrap from the Jimmy Beans 2020 Craft Event. So that's 1, 2, 3, and it goes on, so forth. Some of them don't quite make it all the way across, like There's a color right here. But I'm just using everything that I had left over. Some yarn I had 9 grams left over. Some yarn I had 4 grams left over, and I'm just taking all of it, no matter how much, and I'm using everything that I have left on this. So that's kind of been my goal, is to get my scraps down to 9 grams, 10 grams. I think one of these even had like 12 grams. And then that's what I'll use for this, because it's enough for maybe 2.5 rows, so a good chunk. And I'm fine if it ends up being less than that. Like, I'm not going for like each color having a certain number of rows, or everyone having the same number of rows as each other. I'm just using it, but I also don't want like a huge chunk of just one color. I do want a nice mix, so 9 grams seems to be about that happy spot to get a couple of rows of each color. Like this was a 9 gram row, and I think this dark brown was a 9 gram row. But then you have like this purple that was a 4 gram row, so it's only a partial row, and then this orange was like a 4 gram row. So, but it's working out nicely. I think I'm almost halfway through those scraps, and then that will be done. And then I have some fingering weight yarn left over from other socks and things, but it's still quite a bit, so I don't want to add them to this yet. I'm trying to think if I have any other scraps lined up that I could add to this. There's of course the leftovers from my Advent sweater Advent garment that I'm currently working on. But I don't want to start adding those in until this is done, because I think what I'm going to have to do, the last time I tried it on, the sleeves only went to about here. And I might, before I do, there's like a main color cuff that comes and gets added in after. And I might add some stripes of some other color first, just to give me some more length on my arms. I haven't quite decided yet, because I'm just rolling with the punches and seeing what happens once I have a seamed garment. So I'm toying with that, and I don't want to use up any of those scraps until I'm completely done with the project, just in case. And then I will add them as a set. I like to keep things in order, so I'll add them in their order to this scrap blanket and just use up whatever's left. So that's my granny stripe. It just looks so, like, I just love looking at it. It's chaos, but there's something so satisfying about seeing all of these together. I would not think that I would enjoy this project and the way it's turning out as much as I have, but it's been a lot of fun. And we're already at the last whip, because I kind of wanted to blow through them a little bit quicker this week. I felt like the last podcast ended up being so long. So that is my Juniper Cowl by TL Yarn Crafts. I'm participating in the Make It Cowl 2022. So many years in this podcast, I'm saying them all wrong. And I am using, I'm sure I mentioned this along the way, but this was a set I dyed originally for the Betwixt shawl last Halloween, because originally it called for 13 different colors, a full skein plus 12 mini skeins. And so I went to town dyeing a set of Halloween mini skeins that coordinated with a black sparkly full skein. And I loved the palette, but after I saw the pattern release, the teaser, I guess, I decided that I wanted to save my minis for a project where they could sit next to each other, versus the Betwixt shawl is a mosaic knitting project. So they were mixing within like there was always two colors working together, and I don't think that my palette would have looked I wouldn't have liked my palette as much doing mosaic knitting. So I instead switched gears. I used the black sparkly yarn still, and then substituted with 2 other full skeins of yarn that I'd already planned to use for Halloween projects. I figure how perfect it was, like it was meant to be. And then, while I was kind of bummed that my black sparkly yarn was getting separated from the rest of it, turns out I ended up having a decent amount left over for my Juniper Cowl. So I started with my black, and then I went to my next darkest gray, and then my light gray, and now I'm moving into my Halloween colors. So we have yellow speckled with black, and then more of like a bright, like full moon yellow. Like I was going for like, so my palette started with my favorite Halloween colors, which of course is black and orange, and then purple and green. Those 4 colors together, I just love them. But then because you had to have 12 minis, or maybe I was just gonna have 1 black, and then I'd have the 3 colors, I'd have to have 4 of each. And as I was working on my gradient of the purple, green, and orange, I wasn't getting as much of a variation as I wanted, and I felt like something was missing. So I decided to add like grays and yellows for like a spooky sky, like that classic full moon, stormy, dark sky. So that's why I started with the darker colors at the top, and then transitioned to the yellow because I think that works really well as a transition color. And then now I'm going from yellow to orange, and then I have 2 oranges because orange is not my favorite color in the world. So I only did 2 oranges, and then I have 3 greens and 3 purples, and one of my, I don't have them with me, but I have a green that has a lot of orange speckling in it, and that's the green I'm going to use in between my orange, and then go to my green, and from my green into my purple. So I'm very excited to see how this continues working up. It took me a little bit to get it started, and then once I got a good like rhythm of the project, I have not been able to put it down. So like I think at the beginning of this week even, trying to think, when I took the work in progress photo and posted it to my Instagram on Wednesday, I had just barely started the 3rd color. But I think everything else I had done this week, except for maybe, oh no, I can't remember. I was somewhere in the beginning here though. And then I sat down last night and just plowed through basically olive gray and into the orange. So I did 6 rows of this, and then right now I'm doing 5 rows of each color. So far I've had some yarn left over, but as of the yellow here, I saw that I was getting semi-close to the end of the skein, so I think at some point I probably will have to drop that down, maybe do 4 rows of each. When I divided the number of colors that I had, the pattern originally does 10 mini skeins, but I'm modifying it for my 13 colors. And unfortunately that gave me a lovely number of like 4.56 rows per color. And so I'm just doing 5. And then I'm either going to make it longer than the pattern calls for, or what I'll probably do once I get to my greens and purples, where there's 3 of them that fade into each other, I'll probably just do a smaller number of rows. We'll see. I haven't fully decided yet, but right now I'm really loving how this looks. It makes me happy. So that's that. And that is my last whip. So I wanted to quickly go over, because I ran out of time last time, I wanted to do a couple of 2020 goals to share. Originally I was going to do a Make 9 for 2022. And I tentatively have a list that I've put together. But I think I'm going to be a little more spontaneous. That's kind of what I'm leaning toward. So like, again, I have my list that I'm going to keep in the back of my mind. But like, the bee cowl, last year I was so, like, the first half of last year I was so strict with my Make 9 that I didn't like do any testing. I didn't verge from that list hardly. I was very focused on wanting to get that done, which is great. I mean, it was a great motivator, but this year I want to give myself a little more permission to test things when I feel like testing them. And I also want to start sample making and giving myself the freedom, if you will, to have a more open schedule so that I can jump at those opportunities when they come up and be able to meet the deadlines that either the yarn dyer or the designer needs. I can do that. And so that brings me to the second FO that I wanted to share with you, and that was my very first sample that I have made for someone. So anyway, that is one of my goals for this year, is to do that more frequently. And along with that, I have also started promoting my tech editing thing. I don't know what to call it yet. I know I've mentioned it here a couple of times, but I haven't really ever posted it super publicly on my Instagram. I've been a little nervous to promote myself. So I've been procrastinating on that, but I finally made myself do it. I've been rolling out a little like plan, if you will. And I started sharing the reviews that I've gotten so far from the designers who were able to work with me while I was getting my sea legs, so to speak. So they let me tech edit one of their patterns in exchange for an honest review of my services. So I've been rolling out those. I've been sharing my qualifications. And I know the hardest part is just going to be promoting myself and my work, because I am terrible at doing that. And I will feel quickly like I am annoying people and repeating myself over and over again. So I'm trying to also keep that in mind with how often I want to talk about it. But it's something that I'm very excited about doing, and I hope that is something I can get off of the ground this year. And lastly, I want to be, this is always in my brain when it comes to my yarn stash, but last year I got a little carried away. So I want to be better about putting it in the front of my mind, if you will, my stash, and being better about managing it and being more intentional with it and being going back to it and not just buying yarn for the sake of buying yarn, because that is easy to fall into. So I have quite a few things planned. I think everything left on my fake Make 9 is something from my stash now. I think mostly everything. And I've been trying to match up things in my queue to what I have in my stash, and I think I need to take some time to really look at what I have. I know I have quite a bit of older stash still that is yarn that I've been carrying with me for a while. It's like old red heart and things like that I had when I was learning how to crochet growing up even. I mean, some of it's pretty old. And then again in like college when I first started picking it up. And I know I tried to use up what I could in a stash rainbow-esque chevron blanket that I was inspired to make because my mom has a few that she's made with her scraps. And I really loved how they turned out, so I said, I'm going to do that with mine. And I used up pretty much what I could in a strategic color placement. I'm trying to remember where I had that. We packed it. I haven't unpacked it since we moved. But ended up being quite big and used up quite a bit. But I still have like little balls of like old scrap stuff. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking it might be fun because some of them are so small that it could be fun to do like a hexagon blanket. Like one of those like scrappy hexy blankets. Because that could be a nice amount of yarn to make that. And it would work well because a lot of that stuff that I have that's older is worsted weight. And I feel like making a hexagon worsted weight piece would be a lot better than doing like something like this in worsted weight. I feel would get really gigantic and unruly really quickly. Maybe that's just me. I feel like this is really nice for like fingering or even maybe DK weight yarn, and then you start getting bigger than that. I don't know. Again, I'm sure that's just me being weird, but I feel like doing a little and then having a whole bunch that you just seam together. Yeah. Ideas. I think I'm gonna have to look at that a little more seriously. So those are the 3 big goals of mine for this year, if you will. So less project-based and more overarching, I guess, if you will. So that's my goals. And then I realized that I also wanted to share some yarn that I dyed. So we, as part of the Love Note Cal, Emily and I are putting together a grand prize package, and I thought it would be fun if my contribution was some dyed yarn, since I'm kind of dabbling in that, nothing too seriously. But I created a skein of yarn for the giveaway winner that I'm in love with. And I also ended up dyeing one for myself so I can show it to you, because I already sent the other one off to Emily. So I posted a little like look into a dye day that I had a couple weeks ago, and it was creating this yarn. I dyed 3 skeins. It was my first time doing a yarn that wasn't just like a semi-solid or tonal, and doing it in like a dye lot, if you will. So I used a few different techniques to create this. I first dip dyed it to get this pretty, in fact, I'll go ahead and unhank it. So I dip dyed it to get that really pretty dark end that's only like 75% of the skein, or 25% of the skein, and then a gradient out. And then with the rest of it, I was originally going to mix up a pinkish brownish color for the rest of it, but I learned a valuable lesson and realized I mixed up way too much dye for the yarn that I was dip dyeing, and mixed up the right amount of color to dye 3 full skeins instead of 25% of 3 full skeins, and I had a lot of dye left over. So after I absorbed some of that dye, I was left with a little bit left, and funnily enough, I think this color is kind of a reddish brown anyway, but I was left with a pinky brown color, and I dropped the rest of the yarn in, and it looks a little more cream on camera, but compared to berry yarn, it's definitely like a blush pink background. And so not only does it fade into it, but then I have this tonal that I then covered with these really pretty red speckles. So I went up a little bit into the brown, and then just, come on, focus. You can do it. There we go. Speckled to my heart's content until I was pleased with how it looked. It took a long time. And this will truly be a one-of-a-kind yarn between these three lots, or three skeins in this lot, because of the fact that I have no idea how much brown dye I actually used to create this color, because I went in and I absorbed, I love this color. I had a Chemnitz who I watch and follow just for watching her dye yarn, first of all, but she also does tutorials on this kind of stuff. She lovingly calls them yarn mops. So I had a leftover skein of yarn that I'd already used as a yarn mop, and it was kind of like a mauve color from a previous, basically a dump of all of the dye that I had left over, and it ended up being a mauve color. And then I dumped this into the pot that had this color to soak up some extra, and it gave me this gorgeous brown. To be honest, this was kind of, I love this brown, but this is like a darker version of this is kind of what I was going for ish. Again, I love this brown too, but this brown is beautiful. It's a very chocolatey, reddish, mahogany kind of brown. And I already know what I'm going to make with this because I didn't love the color it was before. That's not true. I mean, it was a pretty color, but I definitely love this more. And I'm so glad that I overdyed it, because now I'm going to make a hat with it. I think it'll be very pretty on my head. So that is what this yarn is going to become. And then I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet. This is fingering weight, and all three of them were fingering weight. And so I could do, and I think it was I have it on a different piece of paper. I want to say it was either 75-25 or 80-20. So it could be a pair of socks if the winner really wanted to do that. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with mine yet. But I'm also kind of excited to see how it works up, just because I'm curious between the color transition and the speckles and everything, how that would end up looking. So, I love it. That is finally everything that I had planned to share with you today. If you would like your chance at winning a truly one-of-a-kind fun Valentine's themed-esque skein of yarn and some other goodies, I know Emily's making some really adorable stitch markers, and we also have a couple of self-care items in there, like a bath bomb and some lip chapstick, lip balm, whatever you want to call it, and then some chocolates, and I'm not sure what else. That's what I know is going in there for sure. But it's a fun little package that is yarny and self-care, just, you know, goodness. And yeah, I'm excited to show what the full prize ends up being. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. There's 2 weeks left. I can't remember if I said that. Oh my gosh. all of the rules are available on either of our social medias. We also have progress check-ins. You do have to finish the love note, start and finish within the time frame. So we had 6 weeks, but we are excited to see everyone's progress along the way. We've had a lot of people join in and be in the little group with us that we have on Instagram, the chat group, and looking at the hashtag love note is in the air. There's a lot of fun colors and options that people are doing for their love notes. So it's been a really fun experience to work on this with a group of people. And Emily and I joked that we'll probably host another one together at some point, so we don't know what that's going to be yet, but I'm sure you can stay tuned for that, and I will let you know here once I have the details. Until next time.